Welcome, 8th graders, to today's masterclass. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here in class today. We're going to unpack one of the most fascinating aspects of human nature, and we're looking at the ultimate rescue plan found right in the book of Romans, chapter 7. Get ready, because what we're going to explore today applies to pretty much every single decision you're going to make, both inside the classroom and out in the real world. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever known exactly what the right thing to do was, but somehow you ended up doing the exact opposite? I mean, really think about it. You're sitting in your room, you know for a fact you should be studying for tomorrow's big math test, but you feel that magnetic pull of your phone. And before you know it, you spend an hour scrolling instead of studying. We have all been there. So today, we're going to figure out exactly why that happens. Here's our lesson plan for the day. We'll start by looking at the universal struggle with sin. Compare God's law to human nature, and discover why just knowing the rules isn't enough. Then, we'll see why Jesus is the ultimate answer, talk about being a work in progress, and finally wrap it all up with a godly learner philosophy. Starting with Section 1, the universal struggle, and the internal battle we all face. You see, that tug of war you feel inside, you aren't alone. It is a completely universal human experience. Now, as 8th graders, you're developing incredible academic skills like textual analysis. So let's look at how the Apostle Paul describes this. Paul writes about a situation where he desperately wants to do what is good, but instead he finds himself doing what is bad. This is a perfect textbook example of a paradox. A paradox is a situation that seems basically impossible to understand, right? Because it contains two completely opposite facts or characteristics at the very same time. What's really interesting is how this paradox plays out in your actual everyday life. It's the desire to do right clashing directly with the pull of sin. So for instance, you might know that gossiping about a classmate is totally wrong, and you truly desire to be a kind person. But when everyone else is whispering and laughing, that pull of sin tempts you to join in just to fit in. That right there is the paradox in action. Moving on to Section 2, the law versus sin. Identifying the real problem. So we need to bust a major myth today. A lot of people think God's rules are the actual problem, that they're just there to ruin our fun. But comparing the two sides completely proves this false. And this brilliantly illustrates the truth. God's law is holy, just, and good. His commandments simply act as a mirror, revealing what is right. The problem isn't the mirror. The problem is human nature, which the Bible calls the flesh. The flesh is where our flawed human nature pulls us toward wrongdoing. It's not God's perfect law causing the issue. Which brings us to Section 3, why knowledge isn't enough. Knowing better doesn't mean doing better. This is where I want you to really flex those critical thinking skills. If God's rules perfectly show us what to do, why don't we just follow them? Why do we need more than just knowledge to overcome sin? Think about it this way. You can memorize an entire driver's manual. You can know exactly what the speed limit is. But that knowledge alone doesn't physically stop your foot from pressing the gas pedal, does it? Intellect alone simply cannot overpower the deep-rooted nature of sin. Because we can't do it with just our brains, we need deliverance. Deliverance means breaking the heavy chains of sin through God's grace, mercy, spirit, and power. Paint a mental picture with me for a second. Imagine a believer reaching their hands up toward Jesus. Wrapped around their wrists are these heavy, dark chains labeled sin. But as they reach out, God's grace and spirit hit those chains, and they just instantly snap apart. That is true deliverance. We need absolute spiritual power to overcome sin, not just head knowledge. Section 4, Jesus is the answer, the dramatic turning point in Romans 7. We're now arriving at the most dramatic turning point, the emotional climax of Paul's entire letter. He's been describing this exhausting, impossible internal battle, and then he cries out, "Who will deliver me from this body of death?" You can just hear the genuine emotion and desperation in his voice. It's that exact same desperation we feel when we try to be good entirely on our own strength, and we just keep failing. Who can possibly save us from this? The answer is right here. Jesus Christ our Lord. That is the ultimate solution to the internal tug of war. When human strength fails, when knowledge just isn't enough, Jesus steps in with the absolute power to break those chains completely. Which leads us straight to our memory verse for today. Romans 7:25 says, "I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord." I highly, highly encourage you to memorize this victorious declaration. Write it down on a sticky note, put it on your mirror. Because the next time you feel totally overwhelmed by temptation, the next time that internal tug of war feels like it's pulling you under, you can declare this verse out loud and remember exactly who fights the battle for you. Section 5. A work in progress. The ongoing journey of a believer. Let's move to that and see how this builds into our daily lives. Think of this as your spiritual homework. Salvation gives us a fresh start, absolutely, but believers have to keep depending on Jesus every single day. We are all a work in progress, and that progress involves 5 key steps: yielding to God, actively resisting sin, renewing your mind by studying His Word, walking by the Spirit, and living to please the Father. You have to continuously practice these actions to grow strong in your faith. And remember, 8th grade is tough. Life is tough. You might stumble. You're probably going to make a mistake. But having genuine faith does not mean you'll be flawless. Genuine faith means you never, ever wave the white flag and surrender to sin. Instead, when you fall, genuine faith means you keep surrendering to Jesus as Lord. You get up, dust yourself off, and you run right back to Him. And finally, Section 6, the Godly Learner Philosophy, and why all this matters for your education. Let's connect everything we've just learned directly to your academic journey right here, right now, as students at HeroesMart Academy. So the crucial point is this: education without biblical morality can actually hurt. Why do we intentionally intertwine biblical morality with your education? Because just becoming smarter simply makes you more capable. If you have incredible intelligence, but totally lack God's wisdom and morality, you might end up using all that brilliant capability to do harm in the world instead of good. Romans 8 tells us exactly how to avoid that trap. It says, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." Keeping our minds securely anchored in God's truth, in His Word, and in His Spirit is the absolute only way to ensure that the amazing education you're receiving leads to a future of true life and true peace. And that is the very heart of a godly learner. You are called to be brilliant students. I want you to pursue academic excellence with everything you've got. Study hard, ace those tests, and develop your God-given intellect. But as you do it, keep your mind completely centered on God, on truth, on wisdom, and on making righteous choices. Knowledge and intelligence shouldn't just make you capable. They should help you make wise, God-honoring choices in everything you do. So, as we wrap up today's lesson, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you pack up your notes and head into the rest of your week. How will you use your knowledge today to make a wise, God-honoring choice? Remember, the knowledge is in your head, but the real power to use it rightly comes from the Spirit. Lean into Jesus, embrace the tug of war knowing He has already won it, and go out there and be the brilliant, godly learners I know you are. Have a fantastic day, everyone.